Do you want me to sit here or do you want me to go upstairs and just listen to it in the background? You don't know?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Ah, yeah.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah. Great. So we've got about 4 people on so far. We'll wait.
Yep. Boys and Girls Club representing Amy and Jody.
And meet a couple people. Make it smaller.
So, to mute everyone while you're talking, and then all the questions.
Yeah. They're doing like Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So Adams, I guess we can wait a couple of. Do you want to wait a couple more minutes until a couple more people trickle in?
Let's wait one more minute.
Okay.
Respectful of the people that are here on time.
All right. And so I will kind of like I put in the chat box. I'll unmute everybody for the introductions, but we'll wait until then. Just so we don't get too much noise pollution. Okay.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Just to be respectful of everyone's time, excuse me. We're still waiting on a few, but they can jump in as they're able to. So thank you for joining our site supervisor training for the 2018 Summer Community Leaders Program. All right. Next slide, please, Jasmine. We're working from two different offices, so we're going to try our best here. So we're just going to begin briefly with some introductions, and then what we're probably going to do is, as Jasmine said, we're going to mute everyone's mics, and then if you have questions as we go along, there's a chat box, and if you wouldn't mind just typing those questions into the chat box, just so we don't get a lot of background noise, and we can move through this pretty quickly. But thank you again for joining. This is Adam Sibley. I work at the Center for Community Engaged Learning and Research at TCNJ. We also have Jasmine and Christy on the line if you want to introduce yourselves.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jasmine Ringel. I am the New Jersey Bonner AmeriCorps Program Associate. I work through the College of New Jersey, but I'm based out of the Bonner Foundation with Christy.
And I'm Christy Cordier. I'm the director for the New Jersey Bonner AmeriCorps program. I've been in my role for close to 4 years now, and one of the most exciting parts of my job the past year or two has actually been this summer cohort and working with Jasmine and Adams on this.
Great. And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Deb is on the line. I know Raj isn't here. But another one of our partners in this project is Deborah Kelly, the director of the TCNJ Career Center. And then Raj Manimaran from my office will also be helping out with the program this summer. So what we're going to do now is we're going to see how this goes. I think we're going to unmute everyone, and maybe we can go in order of the participant list, if everyone has a participant list window. We can try it that way. If you wouldn't mind, just introduce yourself, say your name, your organization, and what you think your intern will be doing this summer at this point. So maybe we'll start with Amy and Jody.
Hi, my name is Amy Batista. I'm the Youth Program Director, and our intern will be working with us during the summer for our Kids Camp program.
I'm Jody Marshall. I work with Amy at the Boys and Girls Club in Lawrence on Spruce Street. I'm the Youth Program Coordinator, and the intern will be doing what Amy tells her to do.
All right, so far so good. Let's hear from Brian next.
Hey, this is Brian Helmuth from Homefront. Our intern will be working at Camp Mercer as one of our counselors. working with the at-risk youth.
All right, thanks, Brian. And then Lauren.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren McAllister. I'm the Director of Human Resources at ISLES. And our intern is going to be helping with our food resource planning and food scarcity, that sort of work.
Thanks, Lauren. Margaret?
Hi, this is Margaret Cowell with Arm in Arm. I'm the Director of Operations, and our intern will be working on our summer lunch program for kids, as well as all the cool projects we can't get to during the year.
Great.
I like that.
Or whoever just jumped on. I see a youth programs and I see a 609 number, and I don't know if youth programs is that the Y maybe?
Yes, that's the Y.
Is that
Hello, I'm Khadija. Yes, that's me. All right, so hello, I'm Khadija McQueen. I'm the Food Access Coordinator and the Market Manager of Greenwood Avenue Farmers Market. Our interns, one will be working at the market this summer. One will actually be working in the parks for summer meals, and one will be doing a reading literacy at the Y.
Thanks, Khadija.
This is Jim from Miles. I jumped on the call a few minutes ago.
Hey, Jim. And then,
Jim, better defined than I did what our intern's going to be doing.
Everything. They're going to be working in community planning and development. So I believe primarily the USDA food systems plan work, but then also assisting with urban agriculture, summer camp, mobile recreation, a little bit of everything.
Thank you.
And Paul. Paul, if you're talking, I can't hear you at least. And if you're not talking, that's okay too. Oh, typing into the box. Okay. So Paul's intern is going to be helping to develop our Heart Healthy Meal program. Thank you, Paul. And then filling out our roster. I don't think Perry is on the call, but we'll have one summer community leader at A Better Way. And then I don't think Tiana is on the call, but we'll have a summer community leader at the Trenton Health Team this year as well. All right, so thank you for the introductions. I think we're gonna put you all back on mute for now.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we have the group chat open, so if you have a question, just pop in there. And feel free to ask a question anytime. Don't feel obliged to wait for a break. Okay?
Sure.
And then Jasmine, when you're ready, if we can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, so this is our agenda for the next roughly 50 minutes. I'm going to talk briefly about the program design, what the summer is going to look like, some of the fun stuff, and then I'm going to hand it over to Christy and Jasmine to go over some of the AmeriCorps requirements, a little bit about the Bonner Foundation, how we're going to track progress and keep track of hours, and then we're going to wrap up by talking about next steps. Well, let me also just say, for those of you coming back for the second summer, welcome back. We're excited to have you back working with us. And then for those of you hosting a summer community leader for the first time, we're excited to welcome you to the team. So Summer Community Leaders is a internship program at TCNJ that's about to be in its second year. It's a paid nonprofit internship program that is a collaboration between our center, the Center for Community Engagement and Research, the TCNJ Career Center, and then the New Jersey Bonner AmeriCorps program. So we have a cohort of 12 students. They're tasked with serving for 10 weeks at our partner organizations for a total of 300 hours. So for those of you who participated last year, you may notice that we've expanded the program by 2 weeks. And the reason that we did that is we wanted to give both you as site supervisors and our interns a little bit more flexibility to fill those 300 hours. We know that it's hard to give an intern 40 hours of work a week, especially with office closures and holidays. So we will trust you to work with your intern to design a work schedule that works for both you and your needs, as well as your intern's availability and needs. Just like last year, we'll be hosting weekly trainings here at TCNJ. So we'll pull all 12 of the interns to TCNJ, to the Career Center, and we'll do some kind of training, workshop, reflection activity, book discussion, and lunch. So we'll have them on Wednesday mornings. Last year we did it in the afternoons. We're moving it to the mornings this year. Another small change this year, which is something we intended to do last year, but just didn't have the capacity for it. One of our interns from last summer, Matthew Bird, who worked with Lauren at Isles, is coming back in a support role and is going to be helping to support this program. And one of his tasks will be to do regular site visits to check in with the site supervisor and the intern to make sure everything's going well at site. And then in terms of key dates, as a reminder, the program runs from June 11th to August 17th. That's 10 full weeks. We're going to have them here on site at TCNJ that first day, that Monday, and we're going to do a pretty intensive full day orientation where we'll do some professional development stuff. We'll get their AmeriCorps paperwork figured out. We'll do a tour of Trenton, and we'll give them as much context as we can to help them hit the ground running. So then they'll join you on site that following day, Tuesday, June 12th. And then they're yours. And we'll wrap up the program on Friday, August 17th. In between, there's going to be a couple of small AmeriCorps reporting requirements that Christy and Jasmine will talk about soon. So our weekly trainings, we think, is a signature aspect of this program that we really value. And we found that our interns really valued them as well last summer. I wanted to give everyone a sense of some of the trainings and workshops and activities that we did when we had them for those 8 weeks. And then I'd like to open it up for anyone to type into the box because I did get some feedback about maybe some ideas for trainings that you would like to see, maybe in your experience as a supervisor for an intern, what the competencies that you'd like to see. So to briefly review some of our trainings from last year, during our orientation, we did professional development and a tour of Trenton. We had a TCNJ faculty member do an interpersonal communications workshop. We had another faculty member do a workshop on health disparities. Our third faculty member, who's an environmental sociologist, talked about trans history and some social context of the intern service. We had a staffer from Bonnie's office talk about a political perspective on community engagement. And then we did a lot of professional development and career planning activities like the Leadership Compass, Myers-Briggs, mock interviews, elevator pitches, resume development, etc. We did a field trip down to Philadelphia and visited a really excellent mass incarceration exhibit there. And in between, as a group, we all read the Catherine Eden book, $2 a Day, had weekly discussions about that, and then did a lot of structured reflection about the summer. So before we move on, if anybody has any ideas that you want to type into the chat, that specific training topics that you think would be really helpful for your sites, or for your former interns that were ill prepared to work with you, what you wish they knew.
Yeah, and I guess as you come up with them, or if they pop up at any point during the webinar, you can definitely put them into the chat box at whatever time. Right, Adams?
Yes.
Cool.
Or if you have any ideas about, okay, we would require interns to do the 10 hours of training required by childcare connection, first aid and CPR as part of that requirement.
Classroom management. Mm-hmm.
So you'll be offering that training, Amy. Classroom management, interesting. Okay, so, okay. So that'll be important, I guess, for since several of our interns are working with youth, working in classroom settings, summer camp settings. All right. Other training ideas? If you do have other ideas and you're not ready to share, feel free to send me an email. Yeah. We'll probably also pick another book this year. I'm thinking maybe Evicted by Matthew Desmond, but we're open to suggestions on that as well. All right. In terms of outcomes, we have a set of outcomes that we want to impart on the interns this summer. Then we ask them to come up with their own outcomes, and then we want to hear what your outcomes are, both the concrete and the less concrete. So our outcomes, we're thinking in 3 domains. We want to develop leaders, so we want to be able to impart leadership competencies. The civic engagement and responsibility piece is obviously very important to our center and to AmeriCorps. And then finally, the career exploration piece. We open this program to anyone that can demonstrate an interest, compassion, and in this line of work, but we don't expect them to be the next generation of nonprofit leaders. We welcome interns who are going to take the knowledge and skills they gain from this experience and use it to enhance careers in different fields. So we hope that this is an opportunity for them to explore nonprofit and community-based work, but we don't expect them, again, to be the next generation of nonprofit leaders. So career exploration is another piece of the pie. On top of that, you know, the Career Center tells us as a best practice that an internship should be first and foremost learning experience for the students, right? So as last year, we are encouraging students to come up with 3 learning outcomes that they want to gain from this experience. So they're working on that now, and then they'll be working with you as we approach June to finalize those learning outcomes, put them into BWebbers, which is the system that Christy and Jasmine will talk about shortly, so they know what they're hoping to gain this summer. And then we obviously want you to be, we also want to be cognizant of the outcomes that you hope to gain from this experience, especially those concrete projects that we hope the interns are contributing to and building your capacity to do the work. Any questions on outcomes? Okay, next slide, please. And I think this is where I'm going to hand it over to Christy and Jasmine.
Cool. Thanks, Adams, for the great introduction to everything that we'll be going over today. So Christy and I will kind of basically cover the logistics behind AmeriCorps, what the rules and regulations are behind you having an intern with you over the summer, and what our expectations are for them to finish successfully in their service term. So just a bit of a background, the TCNJ Summer Community Leaders and the New Jersey Bonner AmeriCorps program create this summer cohort of service members. We are funded by the Corporation for National and Community Service through the New Jersey Commission on National and Community Service. They're housed in the Department of State on West State Street down in Trenton. The AmeriCorps grant is administered by the Bonner Foundation in conjunction with TCNJ, TCNJ in general, but then the Summer Community Leaders is a partnership with the Center for Community Engaged Learning and Research and the Career Services Center, so Adams and Deborah. Our program is offered on college campuses and at community partner organizations in New Brunswick and in Trenton, and we'll go over those specific campuses and community partners later. A couple of you already have some full-time or part-time members with you, and then you'll just be adding on another AmeriCorps member this summer. So the background behind AmeriCorps specifically, it's a national service program funded by CNCS, or the Corporation for National and Community Service. It's a federally funded service program, but it's locally implemented. AmeriCorps members are tasked with benefiting the localities in which they serve, so they're meeting the critical community needs within your nonprofit agencies. But in turn, for their service term, members receive an education award at the very end so that they can continue their efforts in higher ed. The program has a lot of rules and regulations that have to be followed since it's a federally funded program, and we'll go over some of those prohibited activities and the clauses that we have to abide by that we've gone over with you all before in preparation for your interns this summer, but we just kind of wanted to make sure that everyone is on the same page about those details of the program. AmeriCorps members serve according to the application that we've submitted to the New Jersey State Commission, and we'll discuss those target issue areas that we have under our program that your members will be serving under too. Members also complete a term of service, which means that they're completing those 300 hours, which is a combination of direct service and training provided through TCNJ. And then the direct service component that's provided to your nonprofit agency. But at the very end, they receive that education award to go towards either an existing bill or future educational aspirations. So AmeriCorps members in general across the nation do a variety of these listed activities. So they recruit volunteers, or they are mentoring or tutoring, they're renovating and rebuilding abandoned homes. These aren't specific to our program or what your members or interns might be doing, but it's what AmeriCorps does in general across the country. AmeriCorps members, however, do not only perform clerical work or answer phones or perform janitorial duties. They can do elements of these as just a member of the team at a nonprofit, but their main job should not be to just answer phones or be there at the desk. They have to be doing that direct service component that's benefiting the community. Some common myths about AmeriCorps and just some verbiage to use when you are referring to your intern or when your intern is referring to themselves. They are members as a part of AmeriCorps. They're not volunteers, participants, or employees. AmeriCorps members serve, they don't work, and they also receive a living stipend. They do not receive a salary or a wage. So these are very specific to make sure that your interns and AmeriCorps members are separated from your regular staff or volunteer. And so in preparation for this this summer and your interns, just a background behind our specific AmeriCorps program, we are housed at, or we provide members at 3 different campuses across the state of New Jersey. So at Rider, at Rutgers, at TCNJ, and through the TCNJ Summer Community Leaders Program. We also have full-time and part-time members at Arm in Arm, Elijah's Promise in New Brunswick, Homefront, Jewish Family and Children's Services of Mercer County, Mercer Street Friends, Shiloh CDC, and the Trenton Area Soup Kitchen, which a lot of you already have those members at the moment. Like I said before, AmeriCorps members serve in line with our applicant program design. So what Christy and I write into the application to CNCS, we focus on these 3 issue areas that are in alignment with the CNCS strategic initiatives. So across the state of New Jersey, our AmeriCorps members serve in some capacity with the economic opportunity programs such as job skill training, ESL or GED prep, education programs specifically targeted towards youth populations in literacy and college access, and then the Healthy Futures Initiative under food security specifically. And this is just kind of a running list of things or of services provided by AmeriCorps members, but it kind of goes on to include those more creative urban gardening positions too.
And this is just Christy. Let me just chime in here. We've worked with almost all of your sites to flush out a position description that fits within our program design that meets the AmeriCorps guidelines. And for the most part, all of you guys did a wonderful job doing that. And we're thankful for the time that you have taken. It's just that we had to make sure that it fit underneath, maybe broadly underneath one of these issue areas so it could meet our grant program design.
Thanks, Christy. And so, like Christy said, you've already submitted a position description, and we would ask you before your interns come back to just review that position description after we conclude this webinar to make sure that no red flags stand out to you. We'll go over them again with the interns when they start in June. But we just want to make sure that you're aware of our regulations that we have to abide by through these position descriptions. So member activities have to be domestic in scope. They have to serve that local community. There should not be non-duplication and non-displacement. Flag raise, we'll go over that clause specifically. We have a list of AmeriCorps prohibited activities that your position descriptions can't fall under. They have limited fundraising duties and limited administrative duties. You should not have an AmeriCorps member doing on-call hours or serving from home. So their main focus for the summer should be the projects that you listed out on that position description. Let's see. And then going through the more very fine-tuned parts of our grant and the regulations that we have to follow. This is the list of prohibited activities that we would like you to just kind of be aware of. The AmeriCorps members can't participate in any activities that attempt to influence legislation, organize or engage in protests, petitions, boycotts, or strikes. They can't do any form of union organizing, impair existing contracts for services or collective bargaining agreements. They also cannot participate in partisan political activities to influence any sort of legislation or election to office. They also cannot be involved with, or while they're on AmeriCorps time, be involved with political parties, political platforms, candidates, proposed legislations, or elected officials. We encourage our AmeriCorps members to do that outside of their regular service hours because it's their civic duty as citizens to engage in these, but while they're on AmeriCorps time and they're serving with your agency, we ask them to refrain from participating in these. They can't engage in religious instruction, conduct worship services towards that community that they're serving. They can't provide a direct benefit to a business, organized for profit, a labor union, or a partisan political organization. They also cannot conduct a voter registration drive or use any CNCS funds to conduct a voter registration drive. They also cannot provide abortion services or referrals for any such services. We ask members, if someone comes in and they're requesting these services, to just remove themselves from serving that client and ask someone else to go, someone else at the agency to serve them in that capacity. But then they also can't engage in any other activities CNCS might prohibit. So AmeriCorps members can't and may not engage in the above activities directly or indirectly. So if they recruit a couple of volunteers for your site, they can't have those volunteers doing any of the before mentioned prohibited activities, because it's still going against the regulations. So like I said before, we encourage them to exercise their rights as private citizens and do whatever they would like, the list mentioned before, but not on AmeriCorps time. And they should also not be wearing any AmeriCorps gear or logos while participating in any of those activities. So the non-duplication and non-displacement clause, we want to just bring up once again. A lot of your position descriptions passed our assessment of them, but we just want to make sure that as your intern is there at the summer, that they're not displacing an employee or a previously filled position at your nonprofit agency. They also cannot displace a volunteer. They can't infringe in any manner on the promotional opportunity of an employed individual. We essentially just ask that this intern for you over the summer is a benefit and an addition to a complementary addition to your staff. If they leave, then that means that the whole project isn't failed, or it doesn't sink to the ground. It's just they're providing an extra set of hands for you for the summer.
We've run into situations in the past, for example, where an employee at a current agency may leave during a middle of the program that an AmeriCorps member has assisted on. We just ask you to be mindful that you bring in another staff member to direct that program, and that the AmeriCorps member isn't taking on duties or responsibilities that the previous employee may have done in the past. That would be considered violating the non-displacement clause.
And if at any point anyone has any questions about what I'm going over, please feel free to use the chat box once again, and then we will get to them at the very end of the webinar. Our next topic to discuss is just fundraising. So AmeriCorps members can fundraise, but there are specific guidelines to their fundraising capabilities. They can raise resources or money in support of their service activities, so any projects that they're working on for the summer, but no more than 10 hours of their service term can be spent on fundraising activities. So because your summer community leaders are only serving 300 hours, that means 30 hours can be spent this summer on fundraising. But they can't raise funds for their own living allowance. They also cannot raise funds for your operating expenses or your endowments, and they also cannot write a grant application to any federal agency since they're already being federally funded. This was previously kind of reviewed, but just to make sure that we're all on the same page, hours are to be served consistently according to the member contract. So we will go over member contracts with the interns for the summer in June. They will all be serving a total of 300 hours, which equals approximately 30 hours per week. We want to make sure that you all as site supervisors and your interns are all on the same page as to how many hours they're accruing every week, so that once their exit date comes along, no one is scrambling for hours and everyone's confident that they'll be able to finish successfully and on time to receive their education award. They will also be receiving weekly trainings through TCNJ. So Adam's already went through that list with everybody. Their service term is going to go from June 11th to August 17th, 2018. Their stipend is approximately $2,500. So throughout the summer, they'll be receiving that in equal increments. TCNJ is taking care of the payroll side of it, so you don't have to worry about that. And then at the very end of their service term, they will be receiving the $1,230 education award that they can use at their disposal towards their education.
Hey, Jasmine,
Yes.
can you go back to the last slide, please?
Yes.
Just to make two quick notes on this slide. The first is 30 hours per week, obviously, is your average. If you divide 300 by 10, and we want you to be able to have that kind of regular schedule, so you and your intern are both on the same page about what your work week looks like. That said, I know that at least a couple of you have expressed that you might have a busier beginning or end to your summer, and you might need your intern to work more hours in the beginning or the end, for example. I think that's fine. Just if you can have that, you know, your weekly schedule for the intern worked out so they know what their expectation is each day, that's really helpful. And then the second point is, I don't know if we've mentioned this yet, and if we have, then let me just reiterate, any trainings count towards their 300 hours. So when we have them for 3 hours each week, that will go towards their 300 hours. If you have them go to some kind of seminar that helps them do their work better, that would count. And there's, so just be aware of that. I think that's all I have to say.
Cool.
Yep. So I'm going to chime in as well. As we prepare for the upcoming summer, we're going to ask you to not only review their position descriptions and make sure that it kind of meets our program design as well as doesn't violate any prohibited activities, but we're also going to ask you to look at what the calendar is going to look like for the summer community leaders. We know that every agency has a different schedule in terms of how you operate week to week, and then maybe summer vacation days will vary from each agency. So I ask you to kind of plan ahead and lay out a service calendar for your member, so that we're not, exceeding maybe 40 hours per week. We're averaging out that 30 hours per week between the service hours that's done at your site as well as the trainings, as well as planning ahead of letting them know, hey, our office is closed, July 4th weekend, and, we're taking both the Fridays and the Mondays off, or whatever the case may be for this summer. Or, no one's going to be in every Friday, so please plan ahead. So I ask you to, those are kind of my two big action items to review the position descriptions and duties behind that, as well as how are they going to complete the 300 hours at your service site and what that would look like on a calendar.
All right, so we'll move on. Thanks, Christy. Thanks, Adams, for chiming in. Just to kind of review too, this is the number of hours that your interns will be serving, the amount for their Ed Award, and their living allowance for the summer, their living stipend. All of these will be received only upon successful completion of their term. Their living allowance will be distributed contingent on the fact that they are successfully and consistently accruing hours throughout the summer. So if your member goes 2 weeks throughout the summer without logging hours and we notice, they might be up for suspension or just kind of reviewing that they need to be logging hours on a consistent basis. The Ed Award may be used to pay qualified educational expenses, repay student loans, but it is also taxed in the year in which it is used. And so just rule of thumb for that one, we recommend that the AmeriCorps members or your interns use it sparingly. So, or at least they split it up between semesters so they can use half of it one semester to pay for things, or use it the next semester, but it's all dependent on what they see best for their own situations. So talking about BWeber's hour logs and making sure that all that is maintained, they have to register and record their hours through BWeber's, and we'll go through that in the next slide, I believe. And they need to be signed by the member first, and then the site supervisor every 2 weeks. Members will have a equal distribution or a distribution that matches this. These numbers here on this presentation, 20% of their hours must be, can be training hours, and then the rest, the 80% that's left over should be towards service hours. 10% of those total hours can be used towards fundraising, but these are kind of the caps that we'd like to put on training and fundraising. The signature dates on hour logs are very important. So the member has to sign off first, then the site supervisor, then Adams, and then Christy and I will sign off on them at the very end. It is important that members aren't signing off on their hours during their logged hours of service. So if they log hours from 9 to 12, they can't sign off on those hours at 11 a.m. because it just messes with the way that we can register how they're serving. Any changes to hour logs need to be communicated through email, and if there are any concerns or discrepancies, just raise them to Christy and I or Adams, and we'll troubleshoot them together.
Yeah, so each of you will receive a what we call a BWeber's site supervisor account, so you'll have your own login information. Those of you who currently have a Bonner AmeriCorps member serving at your site, this is the same system. However, please note that you will probably receive a separate login for this summer cohort. So if you already have an AmeriCorps member, you'll have two logins to this site to approve each AmeriCorps member's hours. It's just set up differently between each cohort that we have between our full-time and our summer cohort.
Hey, Christy.
Yeah.
For Lauren and Margaret and Paul, and I don't know if I'm missing anyone else that were the people signing off on hours last summer in this cohort, will they have the same login from last summer?
They will have the same login as last summer for this side of the cohort. Margaret, for instance, has a full-time member, so she has two different logins.
Okay.
Great. So the kind of logistics behind tracking your member progress is the first step is to make sure our log approvals are up to date and that UN members are signing off every 2 weeks. If there are any cases that are brought up on Christy and I's end, because when we review BWeber's, you'll take care of those and troubleshoot those. But then the third step is just to make sure that the hours are remaining report. So we will provide a BWeber's tracking guide. If we go to this link, I'm about to pull it up. And so, let's see. You can see here that on our New Jersey Bonner AmeriCorps wiki, we have a guide to tracking your member progress, and it will walk you through how to take care of cases and how to approve hours. But we'll also, at the conclusion of this webinar, we'll make sure that you get a guide to doing that once your accounts are all ready to go. Let's see. Stop share. Gotta get this back up.
And the BWeber system, admittedly, is not super intuitive. However, Christy and Jasmine are going to do an amazing job of training your interns in how to use the system. And then more than likely, your intern will come to you about every 2 weeks and will say, sit down with me for two minutes. You'll sit down and review and make sure that the hours that they're reporting are accurate to when they actually showed up. And then you'll just type your name. You'll check some boxes and type your name in the bottom, and it'll make a signature. And that says, yes, I approve these hours.
Yeah, we can pull up BWeber's right quick too. Might take me a while. And Jody asked a question about getting this copy of the PowerPoint. We're actually going to be sending the entire webinar, so our voice recordings will be added into what you will receive at the conclusion of this webinar. So let's see if I can bring up volume.
So we're just showing you what our system looks like on our end. It will look similar to yours. So you will only see the school menu that's down on the left-hand side of the page. So you're going to go to students, and then you'll see a list of students that will be at your site underneath our TCNJ Summer Community Leaders. So for example, if we bring up one of our full-time members, we'll just bring up William Harrison, who's serving over at Jewish Family and Children's Services. Again, underneath school menu, that will be the only menu that's provided for you. Again, this is the kind of the administrator side to it. You're just gonna go to hour logs. And again, we're just showing this to you. We'll make sure that your AmeriCorps member is an expert in logging their hours, but it's just kind of helpful to see kind of what it looks like. So as you can see, William, it's set up on a semester-based system. So it's underneath the spring of 2018. You'll go and it will default to it once you log in when that time comes to summer 2018. But if we just leave it for the spring, because that's what he has his hours listed for, underneath the report tab, you'll see all the hours that he's listed out and that his hours, back in January were approved. So we're seeing right now the entire semester's worth in the spring. So if we can change, go back up. If we can change the entire semester drop-down list, so in the middle of the screen, leave that as spring. Yep. And then if we just want to do a week-by-week basis, so let's go to April 1st, so week 13 to 14. And we click update, we can do a week-by-week look at it. So it looks like we need to ask William to go back and sign off on his last few days of this week. So what will occur if we scroll down to the bottom of the hour logs, a box on William's end, his login will show up, and he'll type in his name when that time comes to approve his bi-weekly hours. And then he'll ask his site supervisor to then also go in, and a box will show up with her name to certify the hours are complete, and they'll click save on the bottom. So again, this is kind of our vantage point. So if we go back up to the top there, we know that William and Beverly have both approved the April 2nd to April 3rd hour logs because the blue box have shown up on our end. What will happen on your end is that either it will say no or yes. If it says yes, you've already approved those hours. If it says no, that just means that you haven't signed off or approved those hours as of today. So if there is a discrepancy with the hours, we ask you not to sign off on those weeks. We ask you to check in with your AmeriCorps members so then they can go back and edit the hour that you have a discrepancy with. You will also note that there's 2 log entries per day. Per AmeriCorps guidelines, once you serve over 7 hours per week, or I'm sorry, 7 hours in one day, we ask them to take at least a half an hour lunch break, and that has to be reflected within their hour log. So please keep in mind that lunch breaks do not count towards their number of hours at your site. So for instance, if you go down to, let's go down to the signatures again, Jasmine. You will also note that Will signed off on his hours on April 12th. So that's after this week, so then that's perfect. So that's why the 4-5 is approved. And then Beverly signed after William. So if William signed on 4-5, which is the last hour log entry prior to the 2:30, we would have to go and ask him to sign off on it again because he's signing prior to completing his hours. So just keep in mind that the member needs to sign off on his hours after his last hour of service, and then you would go in after he or she signs off on their hours to kind of complete the process. But it's kind of a straightforward timesheet. If you have any questions, again, when that time comes, we'll be more than happy to troubleshoot items for you.
Then we're going to go back to our PowerPoint right quick. And there's only a couple more slides. Quick reminder, so if members, so in terms of member management, should they have any concerns or questions or complaints, we always ask them to make sure that they go to you first and then the campus director, so that would be Adams. But if anyone kind of comes up to, if TCNJ, SCL employee, anyone on our AmeriCorps grant side, if we're contacted by a particular member and in regards to a concern or a complaint, we'll notify you and Adams accordingly. So if there are any problems or altercations, we ask that everything is documented. We have a 4-step process, but if anything should happen, just make sure that you keep adequate documentation of anything that occurs. So last minute, just a reminder again of the important dates. Your members start June 11th and then with us, and then they go until June 12th, or they go into site on June 12th. June 29th is when we will have an abbreviated progress report due. So some of you who are already a part of our AmeriCorps program know the process of progress reporting. Those of you who do not, we will go make sure to individually come provide instructions for those progress reports.
And for those of you who are part of our program already, our full-time kind of has a longer progress report. We're just going to be asking for narratives or great stories of what has already occurred through their service term during the first month. So it's really not an intensive progress report. This will probably be more a responsibility for the member, but we would want you guys to assist with it as well.
Yeah, and then the last slide is talking about next steps. Adams, do you want to kind of talk about that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So I've reached out about this already, and thank you to those who have done each of these steps. The bureaucracy of the college has us requesting a memorandum of agreement for you to sign external to the AmeriCorps paperwork. So I emailed that form to everyone. If you haven't completed it, please do so soon, and then email it back to me or fax it back at the number listed. And then with regard to the partner match, again, if you can address to TCNJ and mail it to the address on this slide. Amy Loprinzi is our finance manager, and she'll make sure that gets taken care of. And I think that's it for me, the MOA and the $500 partner contribution. And then Christy and Jasmine, if you want to talk about, I'll jump forward to the last bullet point. We had your interns for kind of a pre-orientation last week. They're very excited. We've tasked them with reaching out to you all just to start the conversation. So if you haven't heard from them yet, you will soon. So, don't be afraid to get to know your intern before the summer. Ask them questions, invite them to ask you questions, start the conversation about learning outcomes, what you hope to gain, what you hope for them to gain, and start the relationship. I think Christy and Jasmine, if you want to talk about the last 2 points.
Yeah, just make sure to review your position descriptions and make sure that there is nothing that violates any of the prohibited activities that we've gone over or raises a red flag in terms of our non-duplication, non-displacement clause. Make sure that you also are kind of brainstorming a service hours calendar for your member. When they connect with you or when you connect with them, you can kind of discuss what their schedule would look like for the summer and what your agency schedule is overall for the next couple of months. I think that's also it. We have we have like 3 minutes left for questions, but if anyone has any questions, I'd love to take them. And just make sure that if you do have any questions, just type them into the chat box and we'll address them as they come in.
And while we're waiting, if and when people are typing in questions, one thought I had, I know that a few of you have a couple people on the line, Amy and Jody, Io and Khadijah, and then Jim and Lauren. If you're kind of co-managing your intern this summer, we would ask for you to just identify one person to be in charge of signing off on hours on B-Webers, just to simplify things. Thank you, Brian. We're excited to work with you this summer. Any other questions at all? If you have like a one-on-one question, feel free to contact us offline for any programmatic questions or concerns. You can contact me. And then for anything about the AmeriCorps side, position descriptions, B-Webers, those kinds of questions, feel free to reach out to Christy and Jasmine.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, thank you everyone for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I will be following up with the recording of this webinar so that you can have it at your disposal too.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.